Crime. Possible crime? Murders of horses, possibly, at the Kentucky Derby? A trainer under suspicion, suspended? Why? Samantha Markle has inside opinion about the Kentucky Derby. Welcome back to William Steele's True Crime and Steele the Spotlight channel and podcast. Joining me, as I've announced, is my guest co-host, Samantha Markle. Now, Samantha is joining us. Samantha, say hello to the audience.
Well, hello, everybody.
Now, we have great feedback every time you're on because you're not just a name that's recognized, you're also an expert in other areas. So for the audience who has not heard this yet, let us know a little bit more about your background and your expertise and your degrees. And I know it's important for you to really get that out in front of people to let them know really who you are, what's in your heart to discuss.
Well, I have two master's degrees. One is in counseling, and the other is in voc rehab counseling. My undergrad degree was in criminology and psychology. And you know what? My master's degrees aren't going to help me with the Kentucky Derby, though. So,
Right.
but yeah, but I've got a couple of ideas about that too. So let's talk about that.
That's good. So we're here to talk about a couple of things, and primarily, the Kentucky Derby is going to be run tomorrow, which actually right now it's Saturday, so it's being run here in a few hours. Now, I am not the biggest horse fanatic. I'll be honest with my audience, but there may be a real gigantic crime associated with this running of the Kentucky Derby. We don't know. We're not making accusations, but things are shaping up, and it's really weird that horses are suddenly dying. And Samantha is on top of it. So, Samantha, tell us what you know, what you've learned, and what you suspect.
Well, I don't want to suspect anything in all fairness because an investigation is going to be done and we have to allow that to unfold. But I mean, I had my eyes set on several horses. They scratched at, sort of the last minute for a lot of us. And I was wondering what was going on with that. Well, apparently, the trainer of a couple of these horses has been suspended and is, I reportedly being sanctioned because um, a couple of his horses had tested positive for gabapentin, and a couple of the horses have apparently died. So I don't have the skinny on, everything that's happened in the last day. But let me tell you what I found out about gabapentin and horses. I mean, I know that gabapentin is a neuropathic muscle relaxer, but it's also used as a pain reliever. And I've heard of it being used in horses. And at the proper dosage, I did look on the internet to see if I could find anything about whether and to what degree and at what dosage gabapentin can be potentially fatal. I didn't find anything. Everything that I found suggested no. There's not even, from what I found, an interaction between gabapentin and Lasix, which we all know, horses um, ingest Lasix. So I thought, well, maybe there was a negative interaction. Maybe, the heart blew out. Maybe there was something fatal that happened because of an interaction. No, I couldn't find anything like that. And gabapentin, reportedly at the proper dosage, is not fatal. But if it's a muscle relaxer, I thought, well, maybe that could cause some problems. Well, here's the thing: in May, this trainer was also sanctioned because it was found that his horses or a horse had tested positive for gabapentin. Well, he was only sanctioned for what, 14 days, I believe. And so, that being said, my first question was, well, why are they going to allow him in the Derby if he was already sanctioned? And so now that we find out a couple of the horses have died mysteriously, um, that that seems a little bit fishy. So of course we can run conspiracy theories, those of us out there who are betting and who were watching all of this, thinking maybe there was some foul play associated with him, maybe it was someone else. Maybe someone didn't want his horses in the race. What happened? In other words, was there foul play? Was there foul play related to insurance? Are these horses insured? Is there some kind of scam going to cash in on the insurance money? So I know a lot of people who have questions like that, and whatever the case is, I mean, I think it's really sad. Um, in a 10-year window, I was reading that something like 7,200 horses had died in the race world. And yeah, I love horses. I love betting on them. I love watching them. I have since I was a kid. But God, if they break a leg, if they die, I mean, I'm one of the first people to, like, start crying and start moaning that the racing world is so cruel and it's awful that horses are exploited. But yet we watch the horse races and we love the Derby. So when I hear stories like this, I just get a little bit misty eyed.
Right. It's just
Um,
they're basically helpless animals that are being exploited to make money. For beautiful, majestic creatures that are being, run and bred to excel and make people money, and that's about it. So
well,
this
what?
is the trainer now. He's been suspended. We're not making any allegations, so we don't know if or when he'll be arrested. We don't know if he's got any if he overdosed these animals, but it seems pretty strange that just before the Kentucky Derby that this would happen. And like you
Well,
said, these are heavily insured animals generally.
yeah, and I'll be honest. As just I'm not associated with the horse racing industry. I'm just a viewer like everybody else. One of the things I wondered, I thought, wow, well, he was sanctioned in May for the same thing, and maybe he got into a tip with somebody and didn't like that he was sanctioned and didn't like that he was suspended and fined. Maybe he did it to get revenge. Maybe who knows. It's everything's a big fat maybe, but it all just seems so suspicious. And then again, you have to wonder if there was insurance involved and somebody got paid on a policy because the horses mysteriously died. So I'm sure investigators will, follow the trail of nuts to the squirrel, so to speak.
Right.
But how tragic.
Was wondering, have you ever attended a Kentucky Derby? I haven't.
No, I used to go to races when I was a kid all the time. I mean, the closest I got to the derbies, were like fantasizing about my hat and mint juleps. I watched them, but I never went. So maybe next year.
Now you mentioned something about a mint julep. I don't know what a mint julep is. What is that?
Mint juleps. See, this is really cool. Because I think it's a woman thing, but there are all kinds of great recipes out on the internet. And it's also a summer thing, and it's also a southern thing. You can't think about the Kentucky Derby without thinking about a mint julep. And so I was thinking, well, I don't want the alcohol. What could I drink? I want a mint julep. God, just thinking of the Derby, wets the palate. It makes you thirsty for one of them. So I got on the internet and I looked up some really cool alcohol-free mint julep recipes. And you can find them. You just use a simply syrup and you mix it with, instead of bourbon, you substitute it with ginger ale. And of course, your fresh mint sprigs. Here's the thing about that. It's reported that Churchill Downs had mint naturally growing outside the grounds. So it became traditional, I guess, to use the mint in the drinks. And what's really funny is that the mint julep also was known in the 1930s to help a stomach ache. And
Wow.
when you think about it, that makes sense because you're going to be really nervous about your horse winning and losing all your money. So you're bound to get an upset stomach, right? And then and then if your horse loses, you're going to get really sick to your stomach. So what better cure than the mint julep?
I think
I mean,
I
the
think
math
God.
works.
I believe in God. I believe He's got it all figured out and had them growing right there, knowing the effect that they would have to soothe people.
Yeah, so so that being said, God probably put the mint outside of the Churchill Downs.
They say he says that his ways are not like our ways.
Yeah.
So,
Um, so the mint julep has been the traditional drink of the Derby since the 1930s. Delicious, refreshing, and yeah.
now back to the horses that turned up dead. Are you? Wasn't there a horse that was also suddenly pulled or suspended from the race over this?
I think it was. I think it was one of. I don't know if it was one of. It wasn't one of his horses. I don't have the specs on that. I no, I don't know. So
Right. There's very
yeah.
little information coming out right now. I don't know if they're trying not to panic everybody about what's going on because, again, just a few hours we have the running of the Kentucky Derby, and God knows what's next. I'm sure the rest of the horses are being tightly monitored right now.
Yeah, I know. I've got my horse pick. I've got my horse picking to win though.
Oh, who's your pick?
I'm going for verifying.
Verifying. Why is that?
Yeah.
Why do you think
Um,
verifying?
he was, from what I heard and read, he was sired by Justify. Remember Justify?
The name sounds very familiar.
Yeah, Bob Baffert's horse, the
Right.
winner. I mean, just an amazing horse. So I thought, oh God, if he was sired by Justify, he's the one I'm going for. He's got to win.
Right.
So maybe it's a woman thing, but that math worked out for me. Let's see if it pans out.
We'll see. You know what we can do? We can circle back and we'll pick up on this maybe tomorrow night or one of these days when you're available, and we'll see if your horse won, and we'll see if there's any further developments on this case of the suddenly overdosed horses. I mean, would you think that possibly this is accidental overdose? It seems a little odd that we don't know if it's a massive overdose or just barely overdose, and it seems beyond suspicious that two of them in a row.
Yeah, and he's been fined for this before. So I think investigators will, work their magic and find something. We'll wait and see what happens. But what a tragedy, what a crime, what cruelty to animals. But it's not just victim. It's not a victimless crime against humans either. The people who own the horses, the people who love the horses, family members, friends, people in the industry. So it adversely affects a lot of people, and well, we'll wait and see what happens.
Right? It's incredible how cruel people can be. I know that it breaks my heart when I see the commercials, even for dogs in cages. They're chained up just to fight, and they show like humane society type images where they're shivering, they're in the cold, they have heavy chains on their neck, they're torn to shreds. For what? For the entertainment of people, for cruel people who don't know how to take care of themselves, let alone an animal. I mean, it's disgusting. We definitely stand against any form of abuse of animals and
Exactly.
exploiting them for sport. You look at what they do with the roosters; they let them fight and kill each other. And a lot of these cultures, to them it's acceptable. It's been going on for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. But as mankind evolves and becomes more civilized, you should really look at these beings as maybe not on the same plane as humans, but they're certainly something special. God created them for a reason, and there's no reason to pit them against each other, or turn them loose against each other, or antagonize them, or torture them, or mutilate them, and allow this to happen. So we hope that laws strengthen around the country and around the world, to end cruelty to animals, and that whoever's responsible for doing this to these horses, the Kentucky Derby horses, um, is held accountable and doesn't just receive a fine. This is something really serious, very, very prominent race. And what'll happen probably is animal rights people are going to start coming out of the woodwork more and more and trying to protest these races and give the fans a hard time. And, sort of like PETA does with people who still wear furs, they go after them. So, I can almost envision where this would escalate to the animal rights people, wanting to put an end to horse racing because this is, you have fallible human beings that are essentially evil, doing horrible things to animals allegedly,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's only fair to point out, though, that that's not all owners, trainers, and breeders. There are so many people out there who realize that all of the money that's generated from the racing industry, they really do love and take care of their horses. And
Right.
it's sad when an accident happens. And then you have those corrupt few who are just totally driven by greed and self interest, who, pump the animals full of drugs, don't care if they break their legs, consider them replaceable. And it's really sad. But let's, on the bright side of things, I think more and more the industry is favoring kind practices and better treatment of these animals. So,
Right. Absolutely. But listen, let's circle back on this now. We just did a quick story about this just to, get the word out, raise awareness. This is breaking news right now all over the world. What's happening with the Kentucky Derby seems to be in disarray over this horrific death of these animals. So, Samantha, we're going to end this one and we will circle back with you to get to some other topics regarding crime and punishment and things that affect society as a whole, issues that are important both to you and me, victim advocacy. We also would like to see justice in the case of the murder of Ryan Modell. We spoke to, when you were on last time, we spoke to his father, Sandy. And so we're going to put
right.
that link in the description again. And we want to compel Governor DeSantis to move this case to another county from Lee County, Florida, where it will be looked at by a grand jury because all the investigators said it was not a case of stand your ground. And Samantha Markle and myself, William Steele True Crime, support this case being moved elsewhere and being appropriately prosecuted
Yeah,
because
to that one, I definitely do raise my alcohol free mint julep and say chin chin. Definitely on that one. I mean, it
that's right.
deserves a lot of attention. So cheers to that.
That's right. We want to let Sandy know that we have not forgotten him. I continue to spread the word about the murder of his son, and our prayers are with you, Sandy. If you're out there listening, we, like I said, the link is in the description. Please go to the link and look up this case and sign the petition to Governor DeSantis of Florida because, Republicans are supposed to be tough on crime, but, I think DeSantis has gone a little soft in the head and he's very soft on violent crime. I mean, and he tries to conceal this fact, but it's becoming more and more evident because he's willingly allowing, a murderer to go free.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, I know I'm not going to make excuses or presume to know. But there's a little part of me that was wondering, especially going into a campaign, running for president, but even before that, his office was so busy, and I would try and send emails, and it was like, that he was being bombarded with thousands of emails and phone calls a day. So I wondered, a little part of me thought, is this being ignored or is he just too busy? Well, I think we've appealed to him several times, and hopefully now he will look into this. So let's just let's hold out for maybe he will take time to focus on something as important as the unjust death and the fact that this is, a murderer who is walking free and who has not been prosecuted, and I'll say alleged murderer who is walking free and has not been prosecuted. And hopefully justice will be done and this person will go through this system and go through a trial. And let's just hope that justice is done. And Ron DeSantis claims to uphold the rule of law. Let's see.
Absolutely. And we were trying to reach out again to Nancy Grace. So, Nancy, you covered my book while I was still incarcerated about my association with Robert Durst, the wealthiest serial killer in American history. My book was Sex and the Serial Killer, My Bizarre Times with Robert Durst. Was written from the position of exposing some of the things he did around me and to open the eyes of the investigators and the victims in the case. So, keeping in line with my victim advocacy. Now, Nancy, Sandy Modell has been trying to reach you. The people that were in contact with you before about my book have not gotten back to me yet. But if you're out there and hear this, please reach out at official William Steele at iCloud. Official William Steele at iCloud.com. And you can reach me and I'll put you in touch with Sandy. He's got some information for you about a major, major story and an alleged murderer that's still on streets. So I think that's something that you would like to talk to him about. We'd appreciate that. And again, I want to remind you of something, Samantha. When we had Sandy on, he mentioned something about having spoke personally with Ron DeSantis at Governor DeSantis at an event, and brought his son's murder, alleged murder, up to him, and said how all the investigators said it was murder. Every expert on stand your ground said it was murder, but the prosecutors refusing to move, thinking that they'll lose the support of the NRA. And the NRA, the members that we've spoken to, also believe it's murder and not stand your ground. So he's talked to him, and DeSantis said he was going to look at it, and he never did. So,
well, that being said, and we discussed this, if all of excuse me, if all of that is true, then it seems on the surface like prosecutorial misconduct. And it seems as though if it would take too much time to sanction a prosecutor engaging in prosecutorial misconduct and to change that in that district, in that county, why can't the venue be changed? Why can't it go to federal court? So I'm sure that Ron DeSantis would, given a lot of consideration, would be able to um, come up with an idea of how this could best be handled in the state of Florida. Because, murder and an unjust death is nothing to take lightly.
right,
It's definitely not something you brush under the rug.
it's not a Democrat or Republican issue. Murder is murder, and
Exactly.
he was given the impression. I think somebody within a friend of his within law enforcement or a prosecutor's office, according to Sandy, somebody mentioned to him that because he hired two Democrat attorneys to try to get this son's murderer prosecuted, that maybe if you would have hired a Republican attorney to try to petition to the prosecutor, maybe he would have been prosecuted by now. So that doesn't seem very fair. He hired um, let me see, what was the guy's name? Marco Mara and Ben Crump, two of the most prominent attorneys in Florida. So let's wrap this show up, and we hope there's resolution to that case. We hope there's resolution to the murder of these allegedly murder or the death of these animals, uh, horses that were going to race or be qualifying for the Kentucky Derby. Samantha, thank you so much for coming to us tonight. Please, if you're listening to this on the podcast, share it around. And if you're listening to this on my YouTube platforms or Steal a Spotlight, hit like and subscribe. Tell your friends about the channel. I did 18 years in prison. Now I'm advocating for other people. I spend most of my time trying to help other people. And you'll see a bunch of links in the descriptions. We appreciate it if you follow those as well. And we would like to thank Samantha Markle for her time, for joining us this evening.